Welcome back, everyone. Mike McConville here again, Stratford, Ontario, Canada for String Tech Workstations. We have a 10-string Bartolex guitar, new to me, and it's a brand new guitar. There are several issues that need to be addressed, and I'll bring you into the loop as we take care of those issues. Now we're going to start with an edge dress, because those frets are literally protruding and sharp enough to draw blood. So of course this is a brand new guitar, so we, as always, need to sort of cover our tracks. So I'm just sort of confining, just masking off so that only the fingerboard, youch, only the fingerboard is exposed, so that we can take care of the edge dress. First, I'm going to make up a sort of protective caul that I tape into place to protect this mint soundboard as we do our work. And that eliminates any danger of scoring the top. So as you can see, we have the neck along its entire length and the body supported simultaneously as we take down those sharp protruding frets. And of course, this being a classical guitar, no excessive force. I'm not worried about the instrument being crushed or cracked. It's held firmly in place without any danger to the finish or structural integrity. And I can just relax and concentrate 100% on the job at hand. We'll step that up to 400 grit. There we go, that's our 400. I'm going to step it up one more to 600 grit. So I have a tongue depressor, surprise, surprise, covered in leather, two-sided tape, and we're going to kind of finish up this edge. That's much better. See, that leather actually flexes over those crowns and rounds them off nice and smooth. Now there's a very high likelihood that we're going to be removing some frets here, correcting the fingerboard. So let's finish this up first. Well, because we're going to be removing these frets to correct the kind of hump in the fingerboard, I'm not going to pad that French polish on until we're all done with the frets. Let's flip it over and have a look at the other side. That takes a chunk out of the wood, so you can imagine how much flesh it'd take out of your finger. And once again, for the soundboard, we've got to cover our tracks here. This is a mint, brand new guitar. I'll just let that float there, this end. Mask this off. We are back to our leather-coated tongue depressor. That leather just flexes right over all those barbs and rounds them out in a hurry. Now we're getting there. The frets are going to have to come out from about here to here, and we're going to have to correct that sort of hump at the neck junction. The action had to be raised so high to get rid of any dead notes that you need a vice grip for a left hand to play it. So we have to do something about it. Correcting that trajectory of the fingerboard, where it humps up at the body, is the best route to go. Okay, here's the deal here. There's so much discrepancy at this neck to body junction that if we took this out of the frets, this fret would disappear completely. The only way to correct this is to pull the frets, correct the fingerboard, and then refret. You know, the bass side is actually pretty good, but this whole area here needs to be corrected. Well, you know something? We've come this far. Those last 4 frets, I may as well take them out. And when I put that straight edge on there, I can see that there's a little bit of a dip in the center of that fingerboard. Yeah, we're taking them all out. Then we have complete control. We'll correct this area here, reinstall the frets. And I noticed that they have a radius on the bridge here. Well, that radius certainly does not match the fingerboard radius. So I am going to radius the fingerboard to match that saddle. And then we can go all the way across and sort of ultra tweak that intonation. Out come those last 4 frets. First thing I'm doing is I'm taking that radius directly off the crown of that saddle. So the convex radius that we're getting off of this will allow us to make a concave radius gauge for the fingerboard. So I'm scribing that line to create the concave radius gauge that we're after. To rule out any human error, I'm flipping that and tracing it again. And now we go to our drill press conversion kit sander. So we're using that convex gauge that we took off the saddle. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So you can see that the fingerboard is actually concave. We're going to put a convex radius with the radius gauge I just made up. We're going to do that with the sanding blocks that you get in your kits. And as always, you get a play-by-play. Cheers. So the first thing we're going to do is take care of this biggest point of contention, which is right here. I don't want an 18-inch beam. I just want a little scrub block. We're going to take care of this big hump here. And it becomes less and less as you go over to the bass side. It almost disappears. It's still there, and that's normal, sort of neck to body junction, but this is the trouble area, and that is where we're going to start. So get rid of this in a hurry with an 80 grit. And I'm lightening up my touch as I go to center because the center is actually concave. So we'll concentrate on the 2 outside edges and get that straight edge again in a second. And give me another look. Okay, so let's check that now. Definitely better, but there's still an issue right here. Yeah, still right here. Where's that? Well, it's the neck to body junction. Surprise, surprise. Now this is done. Over here on the bass side, perfect. We don't touch there, so it's just this area here. And I'm going to stick with this shorter scrub block. This is the second smallest block that you get in your kits. Okay. Now we're going to switch to a longer block, and I'm going to blend full length, and we're going to check that with a straight edge. I'll get my radius gauge out in a second, let you have a look. Just staying away from the center until we start to form that radius that we're after. In the case of this wide fingerboard, coming in about 3/4 of an inch or 7/8 of an inch, just under an inch on both sides, and really taking down that outside edge to create that 20-inch radius. So we've got our longest block now, and I'm going along the string path and working my way from the outside edge So now I've switched to 120. So we went from 80 and we're stepping up to 120 grit. And now I am being very careful to sort of concentrate on blending from that outside edge towards center, across center, and then to the double side edge. You can see by the wear on the sandpaper that this full inch is contacting. When I press down, that leather flexes and just naturally follows that radius. You saw at the beginning of the video that most of the trouble was right in here. An 18-inch long beam or a curved block wasn't going to do anything to correct that. We gradually spread out to the longer blocks. Now we're just about there. The next couple of minutes, this thing will be ready to receive the frets with a perfect 20-inch radius that will match that bridge saddle flawlessly. Okay, we are approaching the moment of truth. Well, what seemed to be impossible at the beginning of this job has become a reality. So now we've got our beautiful 20-inch radius end to end. And now when I run that straight edge across that radius end to end, we have reached perfection. So we're going to swap this paper out. One of my subscribers recently asked about that. He said, is this a one-shot deal? No, this is a lifetime supply of sanding blocks. So we just put our two-sided tape on here, like so. Flip it over, slice it off. This is 180 grit that we're changing to for that sort of final finish on this 10-string ebony fingerboard. She's good to go. We are almost ready to put frets in. One last touch that I'd like to do. So I'm going to stain the whole fingerboard with smoked ebony stain, just to give it a consistency end to end. This is a very, very thin consistency, like a water consistency, penetrating stain. And this is going to just blend the whole thing in. This is my dry sponge. So this is not completely opaque. it's translucent. You can still see through it, but it's just given us a nice sort of consistent hue end to end. You can still see that center joint, but I can live with that. Get that beautiful radius on here. We're going to put our pilot frets in. You have seen me do this before. Okay, we have made a decision here. I've got my pilot frets in here. So I've got the 9th fret and the 3rd fret in, and they are the pilot frets, and they basically let us know the distance from the underside of the string to the crown. Looks really good. So I think we are going to go with this fret. This is a 100 wide, 51 thou high. These are the Jesscar frets. I get these from the good folks at Jesscar in New York, New York. A couple of reasons we're changing frets. The original frets are kind of a mess. So we're going to go with a slightly higher fret because we have lowered the fingerboard by sanding it. The neck is laser straight right now. Both of those truss rods are loaded. So we'll determine the adjustment of those double truss rods once we're on the home stretch and the frets are in. We've got it tuned up to concert pitch. But the most important thing is we have adjustability. So it's laser straight. We back it off, we'll get a bit of relief, even with no strings on it. Okay, you can see we're moving right along here. I just want to give you a heads up. I have this lead puck with a piece of leather over top of it that I hold inside to support the soundboard and the underside of the fingerboard as I drive these upper frets in. This very last fret I was able to just get a quick grip clamp and clamp it into place. So all of the tricky frets are done. We're at the 8th fret and making our way up. Now the nice thing about this Jesscar fret wire, it comes in a roll. I buy it by the pound, and it's a 22-inch diameter roll approximately, which gives you an 11-inch radius. So that radius is much higher than the radius of the fingerboard, which is 20 inches. This, by the way, is my rough cut. Right, I don't leave an inch hanging out. I get it very close the first time through, and then when I go to do my edge dress, you're not jarring the frets loose on the outside edge. We have an 11-inch radius for a 20-inch fingerboard, which is perfect for driving those frets home and making sure those outside edges are good and tight. The other thing that's kind of interesting is the leather V-blocks support this neck perfectly. That wasn't premeditated on my part, it just worked out that way, but yeah, we've got 100% contact on that top edge, and this neck is fully supported as I drive those frets in. Very gently, I just flush these up. Just a few strokes and we're done. So you can see, not a lot of resistance here. Yeah, that side's done. At this point, you're really listening as much as you are looking, sort of waiting for that 5 to go from a crunch to a whisper. Just about there. There we go. So, yeah, it takes a little bit extra time to get the tolerances that close initially, but when you get to this stage, it's well worth it. This is how we set up to do the edge dress and fill those gaps underneath the So there's the leather on that tie depressor, 2-sided tape, And this is 400 grit, so we'll go 400, 600, and then we'll do our 40 steel wool and blend it all. Now I do go over those bevels because, as I mentioned earlier, the leather actually distorts and kind of flexes. It gets all those sharp barbs out on either side of the underside of the crown. I'm going to finish up with this steel wool and just get a nice uniform blend. I do use a tongue depressor when I get up here to sort of get in tight right down to the bottom. Looking good. Okay, let's flip it over and do the other side. Tongue depressor underneath that tape so that I can get right down tight. Yeah, so this high heat stuff, you just let it liquefy and let it flow underneath the tang and fill the void. Okay, that's our 120. Here's our 180. $400 grit. There's steel wool. I'll be patting some French polish on there, but for now I'm more interested in just checking how we made out with the lay of the neck and the action. That was the main reason that Colin brought it to me.